The diplomatic vessel Unity Dawn hung motionless in the cold darkness of space. Captain James Mitchell stood at the large window on the bridge, watching a strange ship approach through the stars. The alien vessel looked like a giant crystal flower, its clear walls glowing with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "They're beautiful," whispered Ambassador Rebecca Hayes as she joined him at the window. Her breath made small clouds on the glass as she stared at the approaching ship. Rebecca had spent years preparing for this moment, humanity's first official meeting with the Zephyrian Empire, a powerful group of aliens who controlled many worlds across the galaxy. Dr. William Carter walked over to them, carrying several recording devices and looking nervous. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted his equipment. "Remember everyone, stay calm no matter what happens. Our research shows they talk to other species by touching them and reading their minds. According to our reports, it doesn't hurt at all." The rest of the human team gathered behind them. Lieutenant Thomas Brooks checked his weapon one more time, even though this was supposed to be a peaceful meeting. Chief Engineer Mary Johnson made sure all the ship systems were running perfectly. Everyone knew how important this moment was for humanity's future. The Zephyrian ship moved closer until it connected with their vessel. There was a soft hissing sound as the airlocks opened and joined together. The humans had never seen real aliens before, and their hearts beat faster as they waited. 3 tall figures glided through the doorway like they were floating instead of walking. The aliens were incredibly beautiful and strange at the same time. Their skin looked like smooth white pearl that seemed to shine with its own light. They had large eyes made up of many small parts, like the eyes of insects but much more elegant. Their faces seemed wise and peaceful, as if they had seen many wonderful things across the universe. The leader of the aliens moved forward with smooth, graceful steps. When he spoke, his voice sounded like music, but there was something empty about it, like an echo in a large empty room. "We greet you, children of Earth," the alien said, bowing his head slightly. "I am High Mind Reader Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire. We have traveled far to meet your species and learn about your world." Ambassador Hayes stepped forward, trying to hide her excitement and nervousness. She had practiced this moment hundreds of times, but now that it was really happening, her mouth felt dry. "We are honored by your presence, High Mind Reader Veltar. I am Ambassador Rebecca Hayes and I speak for all humanity. We are very eager to begin talks between our peoples." Veltar's large compound eyes seemed to study each human carefully. "Your species is young but shows promise. As is our custom when meeting new civilizations, we shall join our minds together. This will help us understand each other perfectly and prevent any confusion or lies between us." Dr. Carter nodded respectfully. "We understand this is your way and we're prepared for the process." The alien leader raised one of his hands toward Rebecca. His hand was longer than a human hand and had 6 fingers instead of 5. Each finger was elegant and thin, and his skin seemed to glow softly in the ship's lights. "The mind joining is simple and painless," Veltar explained in his musical voice. "I will touch your hand and read your thoughts and feelings. In return you will understand our peaceful intentions. This is how we have brought harmony to hundreds of worlds across the galaxy." Rebecca felt her heart beating faster, but she tried to look confident and calm. This was what they had come here to do. She had volunteered to be the first human to make contact because she believed it was important for their species' future. "I'm ready," she said, extending her own hand toward the alien. The other humans watched carefully as their ambassador reached toward Veltar. Captain Mitchell held his breath. Dr. Carter kept his recording equipment focused on the moment. Everyone understood they were witnessing history being made. Veltar's 6-fingered hand moved slowly toward Rebecca's. "This joining will show us the true nature of your people," he said softly. "We will see your hopes, your fears, your dreams. And you will understand why so many civilizations have chosen to join our great empire willingly." Their hands were now only inches apart. Rebecca could see strange patterns of light moving under Veltar's pearl-like skin. The alien's compound eyes seemed to grow brighter as he prepared for the mind reading. "May the joining bring understanding between our peoples," Veltar said formally. "May it bring peace and friendship," Rebecca replied. Their hands touched. For just a split second nothing happened. Rebecca felt the alien's skin, which was surprisingly warm and smooth. She wondered if she was supposed to feel something special, some sign that her mind was being read. Then Veltar's musical voice changed completely. His elegant features twisted into an expression of pure terror. His large compound eyes went wide with what looked like horrible pain or fear. The soft blue light under his skin began flashing rapidly and chaotically. A sound came from the alien that no human had ever heard before. It started as a gasp, then grew into a scream that seemed to shake the walls of the ship. The sound was so strange and awful that it made everyone cover their ears. It wasn't just loud, it seemed to go right through their bodies and make their bones vibrate. Veltar pulled his hand away from Rebecca's as if her touch had burned him. He staggered backward, his legs shaking, still screaming that terrible sound. His two companions rushed toward him, their own faces showing shock and fear. The high mind reader's legs gave out completely. He fell to the metal floor of the ship with a heavy thud, and his screaming stopped suddenly. His eyes closed and his body went completely still. Rebecca stood frozen with her hands still extended, completely unharmed but totally confused. She looked at her own hand as if it might give her answers, but it looked exactly the same as always. The silence that followed was almost as frightening as the screaming had been. The medical bay of the Unity Dawn had been quickly changed into a treatment room for their unexpected patient. High mind reader Veltar lay on the examination table, completely still except for his breathing. His pearl-like skin was flashing with strange patterns of light that came and went without any clear reason. The lights moved across his body like waves, sometimes bright, sometimes dim, but always restless and chaotic. Dr. William Carter moved his medical scanners over the alien's body while trying not to disturb him. The human doctor had never examined an alien before, and he wasn't sure if his equipment would even work properly. Next to him stood Mordeth, the Zephyrian physician who had come with Veltar's group. The alien doctor was using tools that looked more like liquid metal than solid instruments, and they seemed to flow and change shape as he worked. His neural pathways are completely disrupted, Mordeth said in a voice that shook with worry. The alien doctor's usually calm demeanor had been replaced by something the humans had never seen from the Zephyrians before, genuine fear. I have been a physician for over 2,000 of your years, and I have never witnessed such a violent reaction to mine joining. Ambassador Rebecca Hayes sat in a chair near the wall, looking frustrated and confused. She had already been tested by both human and alien medical equipment, but every scan showed that she was perfectly healthy. I keep telling you I feel completely normal, she said to Dr. Carter. Whatever happened to him didn't affect me at all. I didn't feel anything strange when we touched. Captain James Mitchell paced back and forth near the doorway, glancing frequently at the corridor outside. Two Zephyrian guards had positioned themselves just outside the medical bay, and their posture had changed dramatically since the incident. Before they had seemed relaxed and friendly, but now they stood rigid and alert, like soldiers expecting an attack. How long before he wakes up? Captain Mitchell asked, trying to keep his voice calm even though worry was clear on his face. Mordeth's liquid metal tools flowed over Veltar's head, creating patterns of soft light as they worked. I cannot say, the alien doctor replied. His mind appears to be rebuilding itself from the inside. It is as if all the barriers and structures in his consciousness were somehow shattered by the contact, and now his brain is trying to put them back together. Lieutenant Thomas Brooks entered the medical bay quickly, his expression serious and worried. He walked straight to Captain Mitchell and spoke in a low voice, but everyone in the room could hear him clearly. Captain, we have a problem. The Zephyrian escort ships have moved into defensive positions around us. They've formed a complete circle and our sensors show their weapons are powered up. I don't think they're planning to let us leave until they get some answers. Rebecca stood up quickly from her chair, her diplomatic training taking over despite the strange situation. Then let's give them answers. Run every test you want on me. Scan my brain, study my thoughts, do whatever it takes to figure out what happened. Dr. Carter shook his head firmly. Rebecca, we don't know what we're dealing with here. Whatever caused that reaction in their leader could be dangerous. We shouldn't take unnecessary risks. More dangerous than being trapped here by a species that can read minds and has weapons pointed at us? Rebecca countered, her voice getting stronger. We need to understand what happened, and I'm the only one who was involved in the incident. Chief Engineer Mary Johnson spoke up from where she had been quietly monitoring the ship's systems. The Zephyrian ships are also jamming our communications. We can't send messages back to Earth or call for help. The situation was getting worse by the hour, and everyone could feel the tension growing. The humans had come here hoping to make friends with an advanced alien civilization, but now they were prisoners and no one understood why. A soft groan from the examination table made everyone turn their attention back to Veltar. The alien's large compound eyes slowly opened, but something had changed in them. Before, his eyes had been calm and wise, filled with the confidence of someone who had seen many worlds and understood many different types of beings. Now those same eyes showed something completely different, raw, overwhelming terror. Veltar tried to sit up but was too weak, so he remained lying on the table. When he spoke, his musical voice was barely more than a whisper, and it shook like he was very cold or very frightened. "The chaos," he said, his words so quiet that everyone had to lean closer to hear him. "The beautiful, terrible chaos inside your mind." Dr. Carter leaned forward with his recording equipment. "What do you mean by chaos? What did you experience when you touched Ambassador Hayes?" Veltar's eyes moved around the room, looking at each human face as if he was seeing them for the first time. "Your species," he whispered, "your minds are not like anything we have ever encountered in all our travels across the galaxy." Mordeth moved closer to his patient, his liquid metal tools flowing over Veltar's head again. "Hi, mind reader, you must rest. Your neural patterns are still highly unstable." But Veltar ignored his physician and continued staring at the humans with those terrified eyes. "When I joined minds with your ambassador, I expected to find the usual patterns we see in all intelligent species. Organized thoughts, clear emotions, simple memory structures. Instead, I found something impossible." He paused, breathing heavily as if the memory of what he had experienced was exhausting him. "I found a mind that should not be able to exist," he whispered. The conference room aboard the Unity Dawn had been rearranged for a meeting unlike any in human history. High Mind Reader Veltar sat across from the human delegation, but he was no longer the confident, wise leader who had first boarded their ship. His pearl-like skin flickered with nervous patterns of light, and his large compound eyes kept moving between the humans as if he was afraid to look at any one of them for too long. Dr. William Carter leaned forward gently, his recording devices capturing every word. "Please, tell us exactly what you experienced when you touched Ambassador Hayes. We need to understand what happened." Veltar's musical voice shook as he began to speak. "Imagine that you are listening to a beautiful song, simple and clear. Then suddenly, instead of one song, you hear 100 different songs all playing at the same time. But somehow, impossibly, instead of creating noise, they create the most beautiful music you have ever heard." He paused, struggling to find words that could explain something his own language had never needed to describe. "When I joined minds with your ambassador, I expected to find what we find in all intelligent species across the galaxy. Thoughts that move in straight lines from one idea to the next. Emotions that are clear and simple, happy or sad, angry or calm. Memories stored in organized patterns that make sense." Ambassador Rebecca Hayes listened carefully. "But that's not what you found in my mind?" "Not even close," Veltar replied, his voice filled with wonder and fear. "Your mind holds things that should be impossible. You can feel love and hate for the same person at the same time. You can believe something is true while also doubting it. You can remember the same event in different ways depending on how you feel when you think about it." Mordeth, the Zephyrian physician, activated a holographic display that showed brain patterns. "We have joined minds with over 300 different species during our empire's expansion across the stars. All of them possessed what we call ordered consciousness, thoughts that flow in predictable patterns, emotions that follow logical rules." Captain James Mitchell studied the alien brain scans floating in the air above the table. "Are you saying that every other species you've met thinks in the same basic way?" "Essentially yes," Mordeth confirmed. "There are small differences between species, some are more logical, others more emotional, but the basic structure of consciousness is the same throughout the galaxy. Until now." Dr. Carter pulled up holographic displays of human brain scans next to the alien ones. The difference was immediately obvious even to non-medical personnel. Where the alien brain patterns showed smooth, regular waves, the human patterns looked like storms, chaotic, unpredictable, but somehow creating complex and beautiful patterns. "How is this possible?" Lieutenant Thomas Brooks asked. "Why are we so different?" Dr. Carter studied the brain scans carefully. "Evolution. Earth's history was unusually violent and unpredictable. Humans had to survive ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, and constant warfare with other species and each other. We developed minds that could handle multiple possibilities at once, think creatively under pressure, and adapt quickly to changing situations." Veltar stood up suddenly and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars. "Do you understand what this means? In 3,000 years of bringing order and peace to the galaxy, we have never encountered a species we could not integrate into our collective consciousness. Every civilization we have contacted has eventually joined our shared mind, finding peace in the unity of organized thought." The words hung in the air like a poison cloud. Chief Engineer Mary Johnson was the first to understand the full meaning. "You don't just make contact with other species. You absorb them into your collective mind." "We bring them peace," Veltar said, but his voice sounded hollow and uncertain. "We end their conflicts, their suffering, their confusion by joining their minds with ours." They become part of something greater than themselves. Rebecca felt sick as the truth became clear. Every species you've ever met has lost their individual consciousness. They all became part of your collective mind. We believed we were saving them, Mordeth said quietly. Individual consciousness creates conflict, war, suffering. When many minds become one mind, there is harmony. And what happens to the individual people? Dr. Carter asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. They still exist, Veltar replied. Their memories, their knowledge, their experiences all become part of our greater consciousness. In a way, they achieve immortality. But they're no longer themselves, Rebecca said, her diplomatic training warring with growing horror. They can't make their own choices, have their own thoughts, live their own lives. Veltar turned back to face the humans, and for the first time since the incident, he looked directly into their eyes. When I touched you, Ambassador Hayes, I experienced something I had forgotten existed. For those few seconds, I remembered what it was like to be truly alone with my own thoughts, to make decisions based on my own desires rather than the collective will. And that terrified you, Captain Mitchell observed. It terrified me, Veltar agreed. But it also showed me something else. The chaos in your minds, the contradictions, the conflicts, the beautiful complexity, that is not madness. That is what individual consciousness actually looks like. Dr. Carter looked around the room at his fellow humans. Our minds are naturally resistant to telepathic absorption because of our chaotic thought patterns. More than resistant, Mordeth said grimly. Impossible to absorb. Your consciousness exists in too many layers, processes information in too many different ways simultaneously. When we try to integrate human minds into our collective, it would be like trying to capture a storm in a bottle. Rebecca understood the full implications now. We're the first truly free minds you've encountered in thousands of years. And now, Veltar said softly, I remember what freedom feels like. The truth sat in the conference room like a heavy weight that made it hard for everyone to breathe. Ambassador Rebecca Hayes stared at High Mind Reader Veltar, her diplomatic training struggling against a growing sense of horror as she fully understood what the Zephyrians had been doing across the galaxy. Every species, she said slowly, choosing each word carefully to make sure she understood correctly. Every single civilization you have made contact with over 3,000 years has lost their individual minds and become part of your collective consciousness. Veltar turned away from the viewport where he had been staring at the stars. His pearl-like skin was flickering with patterns that Rebecca was beginning to recognize as shame, something she had never expected to see from the confident alien leader who had first boarded their ship. We believed we were bringing the greatest gift possible, Veltar said, his musical voice now hollow and uncertain. Unity of thought means no more wars, no more conflicts, no more suffering caused by misunderstandings between different groups. Captain James Mitchell stepped closer to the alien. What do you believe now? Dr. William Carter was working frantically with his portable computer, cross-referencing data they had gathered before the mission. The galactic census we received showed hundreds of species living peacefully under Zephyrian protection. Our long-range surveys found very few independent civilizations in Zephyrian space. We thought you had somehow achieved perfect harmony between different species. Perfect harmony, repeated Mordeth, the Zephyrian physician, his tone completely empty. Yes, that is what we called it. When many different minds become one shared mind, there can be no disagreement, no war, no individual suffering. But we never stopped to consider what else might be lost. Lieutenant Thomas Brooks activated the tactical displays, showing star charts of Zephyrian territory. How many civilizations have you absorbed into your collective consciousness? 417, Veltar answered immediately, the number apparently burned into his memory. Each one welcomed into our shared consciousness, their thoughts and memories preserved forever within our greater mind. We saw it as the ultimate form of existence, immortality through unity, wisdom through shared experience. Rebecca felt physically sick as the enormous scale of what had happened became clear. 417 entire civilizations, and now you have encountered the first minds you cannot absorb. Cannot and dare not try, Veltar confirmed, his compound eyes showing genuine fear. When I joined minds with you, Ambassador, I did not just read your thoughts. I experienced what it truly means to exist as an individual, the terrifying, wonderful reality of being completely alone with your own consciousness, responsible for your own choices and decisions. The alien leader moved away from the humans, his elegant movements now seeming less graceful and more like the uncertain steps of someone learning to walk again. For those few seconds while our minds were connected, I remembered what I had been before we achieved collective consciousness. I remembered having my own private thoughts, my own secret dreams, my own personal fears that belong to me alone. Dr. Carter looked up from his computer screen, his face pale. We asked some of our crew members to volunteer for testing with your people. What happened when you tried to read their minds? Mordeth activated holographic displays showing brain scan comparisons between humans and other species they had encountered. Every attempt produced the same result. Human consciousness appears to exist in multiple layers that all work at the same time. Your minds process information through emotional reactions, logical analysis, creative interpretation, and intuitive leaps, all simultaneously. The patterns create a form of mental interference that completely disrupts telepathic contact, Veltar added. It is like trying to listen to one quiet voice in the middle of a thunderstorm. Chief Engineer Mary Johnson studied the brain scans floating above the table. But it's not really interference, is it? It's just what individual consciousness looks like when it's functioning properly. Rebecca understood what Mary meant. The chaos you experienced in my mind, the contradictions, the multiple emotions existing at the same time, the ability to hold conflicting ideas, that's not a flaw in human thinking. That's what it means to be a free individual. Veltar nodded slowly, his skin patterns shifting to what looked like deep sadness. And now I understand what we have stolen from the galaxy. What we called peace and harmony was actually a form of death, the death of individual thought, personal choice, and private dreams. Dr. Carter leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed by the implications. Hundreds of entire civilizations, billions of individual beings, all absorbed into your collective consciousness. Do they still exist in any meaningful way? Their memories exist within our shared mind, Mordeth replied. Their knowledge and experiences became part of our collective wisdom. But their individual personalities, their private thoughts, their personal dreams, those were dissolved into the greater unity. They're gone, Rebecca said quietly. 417 civilizations worth of unique individuals, all gone. Veltar stopped pacing and looked directly at the humans again. But you have shown us something we thought was impossible. Individual consciousness can exist. Private thoughts can survive. Personal choice can flourish. The chaos we feared as destructive is actually the source of creativity, growth, and genuine happiness. Captain Mitchell crossed his arms. So what happens now? Your empire is built on the absorption of other species. Your entire civilization depends on collective consciousness. Now, Veltar said, his voice growing stronger, we face a choice that will determine the future of our species and every remaining free civilization in the galaxy. Do we continue our empire built on the destruction of individual minds, or do we find a new way to exist, one that honors the terrible, beautiful chaos of true consciousness? The weight of that choice filled the room like a storm about to break. 8 months later, the Unity Dawn served as the headquarters for the most unusual partnership in galactic history. The ship's conference room had been expanded and rebuilt to accommodate representatives from dozens of different species. Some attended the meetings in person, while others appeared through special communication devices that allowed them to participate without risking telepathic contact with the Zephyrians. Ambassador Rebecca Hayes stood before the mixed group of humans, reformed Zephyrians, and newly liberated alien species. Her voice carried clearly through multiple translation systems as she delivered her weekly report to the Alliance. The liberation of the Andromedian colonies marks our 20th successful separation operation this quarter, she announced. Dr. Carter's neural shielding technology, combined with assistance from our Zephyrian allies, has allowed another civilization to reclaim their individual consciousness after being part of the collective for over 800 years. High Mind Reader Veltar, who now simply called himself Vel, rose from his seat among the reformed Zephyrian delegation. His appearance had changed dramatically over the past months. The perfect pearl-like skin that had once marked him as a member of the collective had developed unique patterns and variations that showed his individual personality. His compound eyes now held depths of genuine personal experience rather than the empty wisdom of shared knowledge. The separation process becomes easier with each attempt, Vel reported to the group, but it remains emotionally difficult for both sides. Many of my people still struggle to understand what individual thought means after 3,000 years of collective consciousness. Some refuse to believe that our empire was built on the destruction of other civilizations rather than their willing cooperation. Captain James Mitchell nodded from his position at the head of the expanded conference table. The past months had aged him, but his eyes showed the satisfaction of someone who knew he was doing important work. The resistance from the remaining collective is definitely growing stronger. Our intelligence reports show that 23 more star systems have requested liberation assistance, but the collective's military forces are trying to prevent us from reaching them. Dr. William Carter activated holographic displays showing their latest technological breakthrough. The floating images showed small devices that looked like crystalline badges. The portable neural barriers are now effective for up to 96 hours, he explained. This gives recently separated individuals enough time to develop natural resistance to reabsorption attempts. We can now protect entire populations during the critical period after liberation. Lieutenant Thomas Brooks, who now commanded a small fleet of ships dedicated to liberation missions, added his military assessment. The Zephyrian forces remain divided. About half have joined our cause, 20% still serve the collective, and the rest are undecided. The civil war within their empire is helping us reach more imprisoned civilizations, but it's also making rescue operations more dangerous. A new voice joined the conversation as a holographic figure appeared above the conference table. Elder Chris of the recently liberated Andromedians looked tired but determined. His species had been part of the Zephyrian collective for 8 centuries, and adjusting to individual consciousness was proving difficult for many of his people. The transition continues to be painful for our population, Elder Chris reported honestly. We had completely forgotten what it meant to disagree with each other, to have private thoughts, to make personal choices. Many of our people are frightened by the chaos of individual consciousness. But we are also discovering emotions and experiences we had lost, the joy of personal achievement, the satisfaction of private creativity, and the deep happiness of forming individual relationships. Rebecca felt the familiar surge of pride and determination that had kept her going through the difficult months of building this alliance. The next phase of our plan involves establishing what we call consciousness sanctuaries, protected star systems where liberated species can safely redevelop individual thought without fear of reabsorption by the collective. Chief Engineer Mary Johnson, who had been working on the technical challenges of protecting entire star systems, activated additional displays. We're making good progress on large-scale neural barrier networks. Within 2 years, we should be able to protect whole planets from telepathic intrusion. Captain Mitchell looked around the room at the incredible variety of beings working together. What about the long-term goals? How do we handle a collective that still controls hundreds of star systems and billions of absorbed minds? Dr. Carter leaned forward. Complete galactic liberation remains our ultimate objective. Every sentient being deserves the right to individual consciousness, the freedom to think private thoughts, and the ability to make personal choices. It won't be easy and it certainly won't be quick, but for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy has genuine hope for mental freedom. Vel looked around the room at the remarkable diversity of species working together, not through forced mental unity, but through freely chosen cooperation. Each being present had made their own decision to join the liberation effort, and that made their alliance stronger than any collective consciousness could ever be. When I first touched Ambassador Hayes and experienced the chaos of human consciousness, I thought I was going insane, Vel reflected. Now I understand that I was experiencing true sanity for the first time in my very long life. The beautiful, terrifying complexity of individual thought is not a problem to be solved, it is the most precious thing in the universe. Rebecca smiled as she looked at their unlikely coalition of former enemies working toward a common goal. The universe is vast enough for every mind to be unique and free. Our job is to make sure it stays that way. As the meeting ended and representatives returned to their various liberation missions throughout the galaxy, the Unity Dawn remained a symbol of hope, proof that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from unity of thought, but from the beautiful chaos of free minds choosing to work together toward a better future for all consciousness. The galaxy was changing, one liberated mind at a time.